It's a very smart script, and it's very unique and very well written and very novel, and wonderful characters and great people to work with. So it's a very enticing project. Sometimes when you have conflicts, a negative goes into a positive from that situation.
Hollywood often shows us a polished world, but Robert Duvall once spoke about a side most people never imagine. He recalled 7 stars whose habits behind the camera were so unexpected that working with them became a real challenge. These weren't unknown names, they were major icons admired across the globe, yet their behavior on set left impressions he never forgot. What he shared wasn't a rumor, but moments he personally witnessed. And if you think you've heard it all, the stories ahead prove there's much more hidden behind the spotlight. Al Pacino. Al Pacino's rise as one of cinema's most commanding performers came with an intensity that stretched far beyond the characters he portrayed. During the early 1970s, while working alongside him, Robert Duvall noticed a side of Pacino that contrasted sharply with the polished image the public admired. On set, Pacino often appeared surrounded by a dense mix of cigarette smoke, stale coffee, and the lingering scent of clothes worn far too long. For Duvall and others nearby, standing close to him felt like pushing through a heavy fog thick with sweat and tobacco. Pacino's dedication to his craft was undeniable, but it often came at the expense of basic self-care. Duvall recalled how Pacino, living in cramped New York apartments at the time, became so consumed by the roles that he regularly ignored bathing, grooming, and even changing his clothes. Shirts stained yellow from days of sweat became a sort of uniform for him. His greasy hair and the sharp scent that clung to him made closed rooms instantly uncomfortable. Some actors, including Duvall, quietly kept their distance, sometimes a full meter, just to get through scenes without distraction. The atmosphere changed the moment Pacino entered. The air shifted, heavy with smoke, alcohol, and an overworked body pushed to its limits. What was most amazing thing for Duvall was Pacino's total lack of concern about the consequences for others. Once, when he was asked about his daily routine, Pacino totally excluded the idea of hygiene, saying that only acting was his concern. He considered everything else to be minor. This mentality, although annoying to fellow workers, contributed to his mystique. Duvall thought of him as a cogent artist who was completely immersed in his character and was uninfluenced by Hollywood's nice expectations. His strong commitment, both to acting and to rejecting standards, made him different from the perfectly groomed stars of his time. It was not easy for the people who worked closest to him, including Duvall. Makeup rooms had to be kept open for a while to let in air. The wardrobe department had a hard time making clothes still bearable, and the actors got to live through the discomfort of performing scenes requiring them to be physically very close to each other. Yet, through it all, the exceptional talent of Pacino very often rose above the difficulties, which was the reason Duvall found himself torn between the admiration of the artist and the frustration with the man. And if that surprised you, brace yourself. The upcoming name will push it even further. Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper's presence on a film set was unforgettable, equal parts electrifying and chaotic, a force of creativity wrapped in unpredictability. During the late 1960s, especially around the making of Easy Rider, Robert Duvall and others who worked with him often described the overwhelming intensity that followed Hopper everywhere. His clothing, worn for days without a break, carried the lingering scents of cigarettes, sweat, and long nights fueled by exhaustion. Rooms shifted the moment he entered, the air thickening under the weight of his habits and the emotional turbulence that defined that period of his life. Hopper's commitment to his work was fierce, but it frequently collided with a lifestyle marked by very little sleep, relentless drinking, and an almost complete disregard for routine self-care. Duvall remembered him moving through shoots with a restless drive that left his clothes damp with sweat and his skin irritated from long stretches without recovery. Stylists struggled to prepare him for scenes, sometimes resorting to quick sprays of cologne just to reduce the intensity of the odors layered into his wardrobe, even though nothing fully masked it. Whenever colleagues suggested he slow down or freshen up, Hopper brushed it off, insisting the work mattered more than anything else. Duvall comments that Hopper's personal life was just as tumultuous as the artist's. His partnerships were extremely emotional and experienced intense public exposure. One of the most controversial incidents was his short but very much talked about marriage to Michelle Phillips, a romantic adventure that lasted a minute and thereupon ceased all of a sudden. Arguments, reconciliations, and even more dramatic exits became the norm, which contributed to the uncertainty around him both inside and outside the studio. For directors, co-stars, and crew members, Duvall among them, dealing with Hopper was like managing a situation where nobody could foresee which of his personalities would be staged each day. People were captivated by his magnetism, but at the same time, his unpredictability was such that it made it hard for people, depending on production, to be consistent. Duvall nevertheless frequently considered Hopper to be a very exceptional combination of genius and tempest, a person whose unrefined skill and tumultuous life were the same, and could not be divided. Peter O'Toole. Peter O'Toole's brilliance on screen was undeniable, a force that captivated audiences from the moment he appeared in Lawrence of Arabia. Yet those who worked beside him, including Robert Duvall, often witnessed another side of his intensity, one rooted not only in artistic obsession, but also in a striking disregard for personal care. During the exhausting desert shoots in 1962, Duvall and others recalled the overwhelming scent that followed O'Toole day after day. Under the scorching heat, he often went weeks without bathing, and the mix of sweat, alcohol, and unwashed clothing created an atmosphere difficult for anyone nearby to ignore. Standing too close became suffocating, the air thickened by the unmistakable odor that clung to him. This pattern continued off-set. O'Toole's private living spaces, as Duvall remembered, were cluttered with books, old clothes, and leftover food, evidence of a lifestyle where self-care rarely took priority. Changing outfits seemed almost optional, and he sometimes wore the same garments for several days straight. His hair often looked greasy, and the desert heat only amplified the natural oils and sweat already present. Stylists frequently resorted to spraying him with heavy cologne before close-up scenes, though even layers of fragrance couldn't fully mask the sharpness. During rehearsals, Duvall and other actors often kept a noticeable distance simply to breathe comfortably. The very essence of O'Toole's personal philosophy about work was the prime factor in this whole scenario. He did not hesitate to say that acting was very demanding in terms of feelings, and in contrast, grooming or bathing was just a waste of time. He was so much into his characters that anything with the label superficial got the least of his attention. However, this lifestyle took a toll on him. Duvall mentioned that O'Toole finally had to deal with skin inflammation, rashes, and irritation, which were all a result of the bad conditions and weeks of heavy shooting. Yet, O'Toole still ignored the pain and would not allow the physical problems to pull him away from his art. It was like a mixture of respect and patience for the people around him, Duvall included, to be able to work with O'Toole. His acting was something absolutely great, but it was truly difficult to be in the same place with him physically. The constant presence of sweat, booze, and tattered clothes had become a part of his personality, which was being portrayed through the way he committed himself to his work. His co-workers were able to see the great power of his gift, but they also felt the pain that his ways caused. Orson Welles. Orson Welles was often remembered as a towering creative force, brilliant, restless, and endlessly consumed by the projects that defined his life. Those who worked with him during his most demanding years, including Robert Duvall, frequently described the chaotic energy that surrounded him. His intensity was unmatched, but so was his disregard for the small routines that typically anchored day-to-day life. Duvall recalled long nights where Welles rewrote scenes, directed until dawn, and juggled responsibilities without pause, often appearing on set still wearing the same clothing from the day before. The lingering scent of hastily eaten meals and cigarette smoke became part of the aura that followed him everywhere. During strenuous productions, especially while working abroad, Duvall noticed how Welles's living and working environments blended in unpredictable ways. Offices and editing rooms doubled as makeshift homes, cluttered with scripts, half-finished meals, coffee cups, and overflowing ashtrays. Crew members described walking into these spaces as stepping into the physical embodiment of Welles's mind. Brilliant, overflowing with ideas, but undeniably disorderly. At times, he would drift off to sleep in the same chair he had been working in all night, waking only to continue where he left off, the cycle repeating without interruption. Producing such a lifestyle for the people who were responsible for keeping the productions running smoothly turned out to be a great challenge. Duvall reminisced about the days when the costumers and makeup artists had to change their working hours to accommodate Welles's erratic schedule, often dressing and pampering him while he was wearing the same costume for days on end. The odor of stale food and tobacco became everyone's working lunch, an unavoidable reminder of the extent to which he was immersed in his art. Welles, the magician, with all the smoke and mirrors around him, was never in a hurry for the ladies to get him ready, and would even take the rest of the day if that was the case. Even when his colleagues would suggest that he take things easy or look after his health better, Welles would, with unyielding assurance, push their worries aside. Notwithstanding the hardships, however, Duvall and the rest rarely wished to get rid of the experience. Working with Welles meant experiencing a difficult but amicable relationship, seeing a person who was able to change the course of film history while being at the very center of the chaos of unrestrained creativity. Welles's creativity was so powerful that it infected the whole crew, and anyone who had ever come into his orbit would be left with a lasting impression. For Duvall, Welles was a riddle, an inescapable genius whose inconsistencies made him even less forgettable. That was shocking enough, but the upcoming one will make your jaw drop even lower. Ava Gardner. Ava Gardner's allure was legendary, an intoxicating mix of beauty, confidence, and raw emotional intensity that made her one of Hollywood's most unforgettable stars. Yet those who worked closely with her, including Robert Duvall, often encountered a far more complicated reality, one shaped by long nights, emotional highs and lows, and a lifestyle that rarely paused. During demanding shoots, such as The Barefoot Contessa, Duvall recalled how Gardner would arrive carrying the lingering scent of the previous night. Perfume blended with alcohol, traces of yesterday's makeup still on her skin, and hair that hadn't been touched since the day before. Gardner lived with a fierce spontaneity that made structure difficult to maintain. On certain productions, Duvall noted how she went several days without rest or basic self-care, especially when stress and long shooting hours weighed heavily on her. Old cosmetics, sweat, and the remnants of late-night drinks often irritated her skin, yet she seemed unbothered. She dismissed concerns with a laugh, insisting that freedom mattered more than routine. Her housekeeper once described stepping into Gardner's room as entering a cloud of makeup and liquor, a space where glamour and chaos existed side by side. This kind of behavior, which freely expressed her personality, was also reflected in her personal life. Her affairs were the talk of the town, particularly her stormy affair with Frank Sinatra. Their quarrels were often reported in the media. Thus, the public's perception of her being a woman of her own rules was further strengthened. Duvall recalls, the emotional fraughtness would sometimes bring about complications in the performance of even the easiest of scenes. Romantic scenes turned out to be hard, not only because of her inner struggles, but also due to the physical fatigue that resulted from long hours of sleepless shooting. Nevertheless, the allure of Gardner never lost its power. Duvall and the others often found themselves in the predicament of being both admiring and irritated, amazed by her marvelous gift, even while coping with her being unpredictable. She was rare in being true, without any filter and without any apology. And thus, she managed always to be both a source of wonder and a source of irritation. Brigitte Bardot. Brigitte Bardot was widely admired as one of cinema's most captivating beauty icons. Yet those who worked closely with her, including Robert Duvall, who remembered the experience vividly, often encountered a side that clashed sharply with her glamorous reputation. During the height of her career in the late 1950s and early 1960s, she became known for habits that surprised even seasoned professionals. While filming And God Created Woman under the heat of southern France, Bardot frequently went days without bathing. The mix of sweat, humidity, and cigarette smoke created a scent that clung heavily to the air around her. Duvall recalled moments when her natural aroma filled enclosed spaces so intensely that crew members had no choice but to open windows just to breathe comfortably. Her appearance also mirrored her disregard for traditional grooming expectations. Bardot often wore the same outfit for several consecutive days, even through demanding shooting schedules, allowing sweat and odor to build up in the fabric. Her hair would become oily from long periods without washing, and the strong smell of her Gauloise's cigarettes added another layer to the atmosphere. According to stylists who worked with her, they frequently had to spray perfume generously across her body before close-up scenes. Yet the blend of smoke, sweat, and natural oils often overpowered any attempt to mask it. Bardot, however, took pride in her natural scent, regarding it as a symbol of personal freedom rather than something to hide. Her non-traditional hygiene habits sometimes had their downsides. Neglecting bathing and hair washing for a long time resulted in her developing scalp irritation and inflamed follicles. Not easy to deal with during the busy filming schedule. However, she still considered these problems to be very small compared to the independence that she cherished so much. Her self-assurance and defiance not only added to her allure, but also made her the source of conflict on the set. Duvall and other actors had to frequently adjust to the situation where Bardot's honesty was in contrast to the needs of creating a cozy and professional atmosphere. Aside from her strange habits, Bardot's love life was a major factor in her ascent to fame. Her wild love affairs, extensively covered by the media, and her provocative style at parties ensured that she would always be a topic of people's interest. The press played a hand in making her a character of high drama and mischief. No doubt, her beauty and talent were great, but she still needed patience, flexibility, and the ability to put up with her stubbornness in the case of working with her. Bardot was the very personification of the two-sided nature of glamour and chaos, a person whose very presence was unforgettable for combined reasons of very bright and very difficult ones. Before you catch your breath, brace yourself. The last personality brings an entirely new level of chaos. Jack Nicholson. Jack Nicholson has long been celebrated as one of Hollywood's most magnetic icons, a performer whose raw intensity reshaped modern cinema. Yet behind that brilliance was a side of him that often stunned the people who worked closest with him, including Robert Duvall, who remembered Nicholson's habits with equal parts admiration and discomfort. During Nicholson's early career, particularly around the time of The Shining in the mid-1970s, colleagues frequently described how he arrived on set with little regard for personal care. The air around him filled instantly with a heavy mix of cigarette smoke, alcohol, and sweat, creating an environment many found difficult to tolerate. Makeup rooms were often kept open not by choice, but out of necessity, as the strong odor that followed him made enclosed spaces overwhelming. Nicholson's disregard for hygiene extended to his wardrobe as well. He often wore old, wrinkled clothing that hadn't been washed for long stretches, complicating efforts for stylists trying to prepare him for important scenes. On several occasions, his team had to insist he shower before stepping onto the set, because the scent clinging to him interfered with both styling and the working atmosphere. Nicholson, however, rarely seemed bothered. He made it clear that his devotion to acting was paramount, and that grooming was a luxury he didn't prioritize. To him, creative immersion outweighed expectations of neatness or polish, even when it meant others had to adjust. Robert Duvall, who was collaborating with Nicholson during the summit of their careers, remembered these hurdles from his own experience. Duvall was always amazed by Nicholson's ability, but at the same time found it hard to endure coming up with it. The overbearing nature of Nicholson's character, both as an actor and as a person, along with the friendliness that came with it, created a situation that took patience and was particularly tough for the close workers. Duvall remarked about times when Nicholas's carelessness for the neatness of the environment made it difficult for others to work with him. But even then, his exceptional skill was always there to be acknowledged. On top of that, Nicholson's untidiness also hurt his social life. Angelica Houston, one of his partners, revealed that she quite often had to remind him to take a shower, sometimes with no success at all. His aloofness in the matter of personal hygiene reflected the liveliness and the ardency that were typical of his partnerships. Houston shared instances where she felt obliged to turn a blind eye to his filthy habits just because his talent and charisma had her trapped so deeply. Finally, it was a vivid contradiction in Nicholson, a man with incredible genius who, with his habits, left a memorable mark, both appealing and annoying to the people around him. These stories remind us that even the biggest stars have sides the public rarely sees. Robert Duvall's experiences offer a unique glimpse into moments that stayed with him long after the cameras stopped rolling. If you enjoyed diving into these behind-the-scenes insights, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories just like this. And don't stop here. Click the next video on your screen to uncover even more surprising Hollywood moments waiting for you.